Yeah, here. We're fine. Cool. Welcome to Get in the Garage.
Welcome to Get in the Internet.
Get on the internet. We are doing this episode remotely using the Anchor app that Luke loves so much.
And Zoom.
It's a really
Skype's
great app.
daddy.
Bringing friends together.
Yeah. Skype apparently is the worst now. They really screw the pooch.
They blew it.
They had a 99-yard head start and tripped at the finish line.
They really did, though.
I mean, for real though. Yeah, that's weird.
I feel like there's some like cable networks that still have like a Skype like deal, and they're like still rocking it,
but they're angry. They're like, God damn it, why have we signed up for a 3-year partnership?
Yeah, but they're still like, they're like talking about Zoom. It's bad.
All right, well, we only got 40 minutes of this call, so let's do it, baby.
All right. Yeah. So we thought that for this episode, we were going to talk about We Three Kings of Orienta. But really, the three kings of the blues, B.B.King, Albert King, and Freddie King. I had Freddie. Jeffrey had Uncle Albert. And Luke
I'm so sorry.
had the blues boy. So I don't know. Do we want to argue our cases? Are we gonna argue who is the greatest king of the three?
Well, I feel like that's like undisputed.
Yeah,
undisputed.
Yeah, it's like B.B.King's the best one. Like clearly.
B.B.King's he is the best. He's not my favorite, but he's the best one.
Yeah, clearly.
You think so?
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know.
His phrasing is like the best. It's the most original. He was doing it the longest.
Yeah. No, because I thought Albert a long time.
I mean, a long time. Albert, I think, is a year or two older than B.B.King, but B.B.King got famous when he was like probably 22 years old, and Albert King didn't do anything substantive until he was like 40.
Interesting. I'm trying to figure out.
We'll get into it. I did a lot of research.
Yeah. All right. Okay. Well, because I have Freddie. And I mean, he was born in 1934. Pretty crazy.
Right. And Albert's 23, and I think BB is 24 or 25.
25.
25.
25.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah. I mean, so BB, in terms of like a guitar player, what I think is really interesting is that like BB and Freddie both pioneers for the semi-hollow body Gibson ES 335. ES standing for Electric Spanish. And then Albert, kind of a wild card, lefty, playing Flying V.
Yeah. Him and Metallica.
Hey, Ray Davies.
Albert King is the Metallica of the blues the blues guys.
Don't put that on him. I love him too much.
Yeah. Freddie King's the Megadeth. Pretty.
Yeah, there's just big differences in styles, or just what I get from all three of them. I basically look at it like B.B. King's kind of like the sultry, sexy blues. Freddie King's kind of like more of the swinging blues, a lot more up-tempo, fancy, jazzy stuff. And then Albert's more of the like soulful, just rough and tumble.
I think the important thing too is I'm pretty sure Albert is Texas. If I'm not mistaken, Albert is Texas blues, I want to say.
Oh, I think
Freddie is Texas.
Oh, Freddie's Texas.
Yeah, Albert King was born in Mississippi, but then made his bones in St. Louis.
Right. I'm sorry. Yeah, I confused those two. Yeah, so Freddie King, who is mine, so I feel a bit embarrassed. I forgot that he's the Texas. But for some reason, I don't know. I thought Albert... Well, because here's the reason why, though, is because Albert King was good friends with Stevie Ray Vaughan, who is obviously a very famous Texas blues guitar player anyway. So Luke's giving me the timeout signal.
No, I was giving you a T for Texas.
Oh, okay. All right. I thought it was like
the universal
timeout. Sorry. Yeah, the universal sign for Texas.
Arm version
a giant
of the
T made with the arms.
T.
T's for Texas. Yeah. So why don't you lead us off then, Jeff, with Albert? Like, what did you find? What did you find about him, or / do you find about him that you of the three, you kind of felt a pull towards Albert? So why is that?
I'll open with like a little 3 to 5 minute bio rundown.
Okay.
He was born Albert Nelson, April 25th, 1923, on a cotton plantation in Mississippi.
Okay.
He was one of 13 kids, and he grew up picking cotton on the plantation there in Mississippi, and then in Arkansas, where his family moved to when he was 8 years old. His first guitar was an instrument that is known a lot in the Deep South as a starter guitar. It's called a diddley bow. You basically take a slab of wood, you take a baling wire that they would use to bale hay, you put a nail on either end, and then you put a beer bottle to act as like the bridge, and then you would strum up and down to make a droning note, and then you could use another bottle as a slide. So it was like a one string, kind of like a washboard bass version of a guitar called a diddley bow, which I then went on a YouTube rabbit hole. There's some good diddley bow players. Like it's pretty, It's pretty cool. Like there's people who can get some really, it's just a very soulful instrument. It's, because it's one string. So it's very, it sounds like a voice and all that stuff.
Is that something like Jack White plays in It Might Get Loud?
I have not seen that movie in about 10 years, but I'm sure he is familiar with it.
Because it's basically like a one string. He he makes it, like shows how simple a guitar
is,
kind of thing.
Right. So I'm sure he does.
Yeah.
So then in 1953, when he was 30, he moved to Gary, Indiana, and started playing music in earnest. And he started using the name Albert King as an attempt to be associated with B.B.King, who was already hot on the circuit. And he even advertised himself as B.B.King's literal brother, and claiming that he was born in the same town because they were both born in Mississippi, but just not in the same area.
Just playing it up, huh?
Right. And pre-internet and information, people are like, I like this guy. He sounds just like his brother.
I see the resemblance. I'm sure.
The harmonica player, Sonny Boy Williams, did the same thing. He literally just stole the original Sonny Boy Williams name.
Oh, yeah. You have Sonny Boy Williams the second.
And then only later when people are like, wait, aren't you two different people? He's like, oh, yeah. I'm the second.
Yeah.
Junior. So he was in Gary, Indiana, playing guitar, and went so far that B.B. King's guitar is called Lucille, and Albert called his guitar Lucy. and I guess B.B. King was annoyed by this, because I'm sure that there might have been gigs that he lost to Albert King, because they're like, well, we already have one of your brothers playing tonight. But then when he got to know Albert, when they were in their 40s, he said that he wasn't my brother by blood, but he sure was my brother in the blues. So those two guys ended up having a very close working relationship in their midlife till later life. So then in the mid to late 50s, he formed a band that was popular in St. Louis, alongside bands such as Ike Turner's Kings of Rhythm and Chuck Berry. So they'd play the same clubs, the same dates and stuff, which is pretty crazy to think about. Ike Turner, of course, went on to marry Tina Turner. He's credited as being the guy who made the first rock and roll song.
Rocket 88.
That's right. And then, so in 1961, when he was 36 years old, Albert King released his first hit called Don't Throw Your Love on Me So Strong, which actually featured Ike Turner on piano. But then he had no other successes in the early 60s, and his only career prospects would be to continue touring the circuits of the South and Midwest. So instead, he decided to settle down and move to Memphis and sign with Stax Records in 1966 to try to really make it as a full-time, album making artist instead of just playing 6 nights a week at bars and stuff. When he signed with Stax Records, he started releasing singles featuring Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns as his backing band, which for those of you who love R&B music, it's the South version of the Motown sound. Their house bands were Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns. And he also had Isaac Hayes playing as his piano player. In 1967, a year after he signed with Stax Records, they compiled all the singles he had released in that year, and they made it into the album package called Born Under a Bad Sign, which is my favorite thing that he's ever done. It's one of the great electric blues records of all time.
Yeah, and that song too, arguably, like probably one of the most famous too. I mean, covered by Cream,
exactly,
by Rory Gallagher, pretty well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that song, title track, written by Booker T, the organist, and it was his biggest hit, covered by Jimi Hendrix and Cream and so on and so forth. And people think the key to him having success during this time was because instead of just playing electric blues, very much kind of like the Howlin' Wolf and the Muddy Waters, he incorporated more of that contemporary R&B feel that was popular on radio and stuff at the time.
Yeah.
Then a year later, in 1968, he recorded a live album at Fillmore West, which he recorded. I think it's only six-ish tracks long, the actual album that was released, but it's taken from the 3 concerts he did at Fillmore West. And this puts things in perspective. In 1968, he got paid $1,600 to play 3 shows at Fillmore West.
Some of the best spoken word dialogues in that record as well, like some of the best dialogue ever put through.
Right, his just talking in between songs.
But my favorite is when he's talking about the girl, she wants to go out with her boyfriend. She's got a brand new GTO, and they say, I'm going down to the soda fountain. Mom said, then he's like, and then the mother says whoa, where do you think you're going? And the mom won't let their daughter go out. She's got the blues. He keeps shouting, and he's like, can you hear me? But that's the cool thing. He's like, that performance is so great, man. His demand for the audience, it's very a la James Brown, and very much it's to me, all 3 of these guys, their backing bands were, that's the era of you better have a badass backing band, and everything because he could just go off the rails, start playing whatever the hell he wants, or just starts going off on these tangents, kind of like I am, and and just demanding the floor. But yeah.
So speaking about backing bands, then in the early 70s, he, after embracing the R&B radio sound, he started to get into funk music, and he recorded songs with the reformed version of the Bar-Kays, which notably was Otis Redding's backing band, and which 4 of the 6 original Bar-Kays died in the plane crash with Otis Redding in, I believe it was 1967. But the 2 remaining guys, surviving members, reformed the band and started being his backing band in the early 70s. But then, unfortunately, in 1975, Stax Records filed for bankruptcy. And then Albert signed with a small label called Utopia, and then toured the Deep South, and he bought a fleet of taxi cabs, kind of just doing things to make ends meet. And then in 1978, he signed with a record company called Tomato Records, which I know nothing about, but I'm sure at the very least they must have a good logo, I would think.
I would hope so.
And he recorded with New Orleans R&B producer Alan Toussaint, who's a very well-known New Orleans musician.
Yeah.
Then he took a 4-year break from recording because his album sales in the mid to late 70s were really disappointing. And then he came back in the early 80s, 83, started to make appearances again. And he got rid of anything in his repertoire that wasn't strictly 12-bar blues with guitar, bass, drums, and piano. He dropped all of the R&B stuff, he dropped all the funk stuff, and went straight to playing the blues. At this point, he was almost 50, so it does make sense that he was kind of getting into his old man stage. And then in 1983, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say strong blues revival in the 80s too. So like
Right.
like people like went back to like the nitty gritty of it because you kind of had like the new blues superstars coming out, like
Yep.
you know, your Stevie Ray Vaughns and that kind of thing.
So on that note, 1983, kind of his first thing back after not really doing anything for a couple years, he recorded a live broadcast concert for Canadian TV featuring then up and coming Texas blues guitarist Stevie Ray Vaughan. It's called In Session. It's both amazing and a little underwhelming because they're kind of just like sitting in a room and shooting the shit. So it's like nothing mind blowing, but it is really interesting to hear two greats just kind of shoot the shit and play some tunes.
And talk about somebody who totally influenced Stevie Ray Vaughan, man. Albert King all day, like, because that's the thing is like that you know, people draw the comparison of like Eric Clapton to Freddie King, Peter Green, maybe a little bit more B.B.King heavy, but then you look at a guy like Stevie Ray Vaughan, and if you listen to early tracks of Stevie Ray Vaughan playing, you can hear that he doesn't sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan. He's still throwing in a little Claptonish flavor, whatever. The realized version of Stevie Ray Vaughan's playing is almost like just a juiced up, more cocaine-fueled version of what Albert King does. Because that's pretty much what it is, man. Like when you A-B those two, it's like the same thing. They're playing the same thing. Stevie Ray Vaughan's just playing with a little bit more intensity and a little bit more, well, cocaine.
Right. And so sidebar, here's just a snapshot of Stevie Ray Vaughan's 1983. In March, he was featured on David Bowie's hit song Let's Dance, which went number 1 in the US and the UK. In June, he released his debut album with Double Trouble, Texas Flood. And then in December, he played with his greatest influence on live TV. Like, and he's like, you know, he's 29, I believe, at the time. So, I mean, what a crazy year for that dude.
Yeah. Very much so.
So then at the end of Albert's life, he considered retiring in the late 80s due to health problems, but he continued doing regular tours and, you know, playing at blues festivals and things like that. And he would travel in a tour bus, which was a converted Greyhound bus, with the words, "I'll play the blues for you," painted on the side of the bus. And then he died of a heart attack in his Memphis home at the age of 69. Nice.
R.I.P.
On December 21st, 1992, which was 28 years ago today.
Oh. Very interesting.
And he had played his final concert in Los Angeles just 2 days before that. And he was given a funeral procession featuring the Memphis Horns playing When the Saints Go Marching In, and was buried near his childhood home in Arkansas.
That's pretty dope.
So that's like my bio rundown. Now I can talk a little bit about guitar shit. So Albert King was known as he's a giant man. He was 6.5 feet tall. He was 250 plus pounds. He had hands like the size of oven mitts. And he played he was a left-handed person, but when he was young and he bought a guitar for the first time for like $1.50 in the 40s, he didn't know anything about guitar, so he just bought the guitar and then flipped it upside down. So he plays, if you're a guitarist, or even if you're not a guitarist, normally a guitar player has the thinnest, highest pitch strings are close to the floor, and the thicker, lower pitch strings are closer to your shoulders. But since his was flipped over, his low strings were near the ground and his high strings were up near his shoulders. So when he did bends, instead of pushing, which is kind of the standard for a standard guitar, he would pull the strings into his palm. So it created these like wild bends where he would kind of just play a note, and if it was nowhere near being right, he would just bend it until it was right.
Yeah.
Like he does like 2 whole step bends constantly, which is, it's hard enough to do when you're a really good guitar player in any style, but he would just play with this death grip on the guitar. And he pretty much forewent all of the low pitch strings, and he stuck to like the same phrases, just with different feel, different flavor, different timing on the higher pitched strings. So his guitar playing out of the three guys, I think he did the most with the least, because his guitar was just an extension of his voice, of his big commanding stage presence.
Yeah.
And he would just wail on these kind of the same licks, just in different ways. Also, what I love about Albert King, giant man, giant booming voice. He like started sweating probably 3 hours before the show started. He would play with. He basically looked like a bad guy in Shaft. Like he had like the wide lapels, and he would play with a giant like fedora or other kind of hats on, and large tinted glasses, and he had a pipe a lot of the time. So he just looked like this character. Like, I just love watching him when you go on YouTube and just watch videos of Albert King, because he just looks like he's both not trying in any way and like he's just playing his heart out, and he's just like giving you every inch of him. So, I mean, when you said pick the guy you want to do, I immediately said I want to talk about Albert King, because I don't care that he basically plays like 8 notes on every song. He just like does his thing, and it's so distinctive, and it's so recognizable, because the upside down guitar, even like, I'm a guitar player, I play a regular strung guitar, but I do a lot of upstrokes instead of downstrokes, and because I kind of just learned to play with personality rather than to play with precision. And that's how Albert King sounds, because when he's doing downstrokes, it sounds like he's playing upstrokes because how the guitar is strung upside down. So he has this very distinctive style that is really hard to replicate. And he's just, I mean, he was one of a kind.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'd say so for sure. What's interesting is like, I mean, like, so moving forward, Albert and B.B. both had pretty decent sized careers. You know what I mean? Like, they were kind of able to see their own success.
I think so. I definitely think
B.B. definitely did.
I think Albert King too. Like, definitely, at least, like, my opinion. I like agree with Jeff. I think he has the best blues albums, like the best blues album of the '60s. Like, Born Under a Bad Sign is like, so,
yeah. Oh yeah.
So classic beyond, I think, any belief. Like, B.B. King's records are great, but for me, like, the solidness of how well recorded and classic every single song is on that release is like, and with Blues Power, the Live at the Fillmore record, those two are like definitely in your like, if there was like a top 20 blues records, those two are definitely like towards, the top. They're definitely in there, especially for guitar player wise,
Yeah.
Born Under a Bad Sign is, I love it. It's one of those records where the guitar is actually kind of low in the mix and sounds kind of thin, but the rest of the arrangement is so powerful that I don't really even care.
Yeah, I agree. And the solos, when they do kick, are great, and you can kind of like, I mean, they kick up in the mix, but like for the most part, like in the verse, it's not really like super guitar heavy. I also like how they took the blues from like kind of like a thing that kind of had been shuffling, like Smokestack Lightning, even like don't bump, it's got that like hiccup in it. Where Born Under a Bad Sign to me and all those songs seem more angular and squared. Like the riff is like dum, ba-dum, dum, 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 that kind of thing, where it's more like squared in line and moves like that, as opposed to like shuffle blues, jump blues, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It really put like a backbeat and groove into the blues, right? Would you say that would like kind of make, definitely that's what I think makes him different than everybody or the other two people that we're going to talk about, right?
I mean, I think Albert was really good at taking the country blues out of the blues. Like, you know what I mean? Because like Muddy still had some country blues about him. Howlin' Wolf still had some country blues about him. I like Albert in the way that I kind of like B.B. a little bit later BB, not early BB, but like, you know, it's the Chicago blues thing, man. It's like that.
What I'm saying is that it's more, they take the blues and they make it more riff based, so you can like jam it makes like a garage band more possible kind of thing, right? Because that everybody can go dom 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 dom, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it's focused around the riff.
Yeah, I think it just put it into more like a classic rock context. Like it was building that, and like then when you get Led Zeppelin, you're like, oh yeah, of course, that makes sense. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's just just a little heavier.
Yeah.
And I think what was really important for Albert's career is the fact that he didn't hit until he was over 40 years old. Kind of like he didn't get into playing a style because he had no success playing old blues style.
Yeah.
So
right.
I mean, I don't know, but maybe when he signed with Stax, he's like, fuck it, nothing else is working. Like, I'm just gonna hop with these young guns and I'm just gonna like play their things. I'll do my shit over it, and it's gonna come together.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's
because those dudes, like the Booker T and the MGs and the Memphis Horns and the Bar-Kays and all those guys, those dudes were all under like 25 years old.
Mm-hmm. And to be fair, too, if you play any of those Stax records from that era, they almost all sound the same. Except, I mean, obviously that one's got a more guitar bass and a different take on the vocals. But you know what I mean? Very solid backing band.
Yeah, very important to him having success. Not only Booker T as Booker T Jones.
Mm-hmm.
As a songwriter, but Steve Cropper, the guitarist for Booker T and the MGs, and Al Jackson Jr. were the two guys that were kind of pushing for Albert King to have success, and they probably were in the studio all hours of the night just trying to be like, we love this guy's shit. We don't know why it's never hit before, but like, we love it, so we're gonna make something out of it.
Yeah.
And shout out to Duck Dunn for playing bass too.
Yeah, right
on.
Yeah. But, so if we're speaking of bands, though, right? So people that really made it, like Mike was saying earlier, B.B.King and his band, and like Jeff was even saying earlier too. Back in the day, to really be successful, you really had to have like a good unit of people behind you. Like Ike had the Rhythm Kings, later the Ikeettes, right? They toured on what was known as the Chitlin circuit. B.B. King was big in paving that circuit and in, like forging it originally and, being one of the people on it. So, if we're going to like switch it up and talk about B.B. King, the other one, the second King, B.B. King is really like, I think, the template of every blues guitar player afterwards that heard him. I think you kind of have your original set, which is like, your real country blues stuff that was in the Mississippi Delta, that was kind of more rarely recorded.
Charlie Patton's.
If it was recorded, it sounds like this.
Like through a can.
Yeah, the Blind Lemon Jefferson stuff.
Right. Yeah. So that would be your first class of blues.
That's my blues name, Blind Lemon Jefferson.
Yeah. Those pictures of him are great. There's like a couple of them.
Yeah, he's just like
your Robert Johnsons. But so you have that kind of class, and then B.B. King is kind of the gap between the guitar hero and Mike is making the Jefferson.
I'm posing. I'm sorry. For people who can't see what we're doing, this makes no sense.
It's great for podcasting.
There's like one picture of him that exists, and it's I think there would be like three, but they all look the same picture. They could be the same.
Are you talking about Robert Johnson?
No, Blind Lemon Jefferson.
Oh yeah.
But so I would say like B.B. King is definitely the transition from the original people that literally I would say invented the blues into making it the style of music that it is. I think B.B. King gave it a beat. He was the first guitar hero. Licks.
Yeah, I think with Willie Dixon and Muddy Waters and those guys, like he's a Chicago blues guy all day. Like if you want to hand somebody something that when somebody says, what is Chicago blues? I feel like B.B. King's pick number one, baby.
Right. And he's got like most of his stuff, is got, he was the type of player where he really wouldn't sing and play guitar at the same time kind of thing. He would kind of say a line, and then whatever line he had sung, his playing would kind of reflect off of that, which is like such a great talent. His playing is just so, really what makes the blues as we know it today. But he came from the Delta, Mississippi, was born on a plantation, and he would like kind of learn from the other original musicians that were all around in the area at the time. That's, you know what I mean? A lot of them got started. If we're talking where he first really like gets to playing, it's on Beale Street in Mississippi. And
Memphis.
Played, like, what?
Memphis.
Oh, did I say Mississippi?
Slip of the tongue.
There you go. But he would pretty much he would learn, and then they all these musicians would congregate around the same place. Bobby Blue Bland, who he would record albums with later in the 60s. Amazing singer. And these musicians would Bobby Bland is more of like a you'd say like the original R&B soul singer kind of thing, right?
Yeah. Very
mixed with the blues, and then so you kind of got that thing incubating where it's like soul singing, R&B. B.B. King's definitely more of the blues. And at the time, you have these crazy radio stations that like blast halfway across the country. And B.B. King was doing a lot of those radio things. King Biscuit, the flour mixture back in the day, he would do those shows, like King Biscuit Flour Hour, which actually went on into the 70s and made some of the best bootleg recordings of all time. But so that's really where he's cutting his teeth on these radio shows. He's like a young guy. And when he kind of goes to the city, he had taken all these things he had learned from being on the radio and having to prepare a show and getting everything together. And when he really moves to the city, that's where B.B. King more or less like explodes, I'd say. And it's really like the personality.
Talk about his weight or his personality. Oh,
whoa.
Hey, sorry.
So at this time, like Mike, how would you say like early B.B. King guitar, like right around the turn where he would really start to get famous, like on cuts like Sweet 16, that kind of stuff, at 3 o'clock blues? Like
for me, especially 3 o'clock, like that. There's kind of
because these are like the early singles from the 50s.
Yeah, the thing about B.B. King is that like if you're talking to other guitar players about like the B.B. King, quote unquote, the B.B. King sound, it's the B.B. King sound, as it's known today, is still very different than what it actually was in those early recordings. Because in those early recordings, it wasn't kind of like that tone rolled back through an ES-335, like that warm, round, fuzzy, sort of woolly kind of sound that would become the B.B. King sound that we know. It really back then, especially like 3 o'clock in the morning, like those songs, it's still really early sounding, kind of like early Beatles going through like Vox amplifiers kind of sound. It's that shiny, shimmery, kind of glassy tones rather than like the warm bell tones that B.B. King would end up being known for, say in like the 1970s, which not my favorite era for B.B. King music, the 1970s, but I don't think they're the worst either.
I agree. And these early recordings too, most of them were done on the label Crown and King, which was the same label that James Brown was on. It's mostly a black label. A lot of at the time, because obviously back in those times it was horrible, but you had your really labels that recorded primarily black artists and then labels that recorded primarily white artists. King Records, Crown Records, the same record company, and they did a lot of great records, but that's where some of B.B. King's stuff is on. And he further gets traction when he gets on better labels, as in ABC. But the early recordings from the 50s, like we were just saying, Sweet Little Angel, 3 O'Clock Blues, Sweet 16, are basically some of the best blues songs ever written, and some of the best guitar for that point that had ever been, recorded.
Electric guitar,
yeah. So when you get like your Yardbirds in the midst, the British invasion people, that was the recordings that they had heard. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you got all that kind of stuff. And then you also get for B.B. King where he like explodes even further on the scene, where just I'd say like Albert King, the live stuff really had like a lot more to say. Obviously, like I was saying earlier, the King Biscuit Flower Hours that he used to do, like those shows showcase blues in the live setting, and I feel like most blues recordings from that time period that were done in studio kind of suffer from the lack of personality that like B.B. King live at the Regal.
Yeah,
really,
man, the audience is the other instrument.
There you go. It really like it reflects back in such a great way. Like the storytelling on those songs is really what blows me away.
Oh man, when he does that whole thing where he's like, I bought you a brand new Ford, but you said I want a Cadillac.
Yeah.
I bought you a $10 dinner. You said thanks for the snack. I let you live in my penthouse. You said it was just a shack. And then the way he ends it, he says, I gave you 7 children, and now you want to give them back? Like, come on, man.
It's amazing. And, I mean, also...
Come on.
The Live at the Regal, 1965, that record's released. First song on it, too, is, Every Day Have the Blues. Well, I mean, such a great kill.
And they come in steaming, too. They're like... He's like, every day. It's so... Like, they play him on... this is still the time where your band played you on and then played you off stage,
Oh, yeah. And, I mean, Every Day I Have the Blues is one of my favorite tunes. Another great cover of it is the John Mayer Blues Trio does a great version of it.
Oh, yeah.
But I'd say this record, too, is probably, I mean, this is such a heavy hitter live at the Regal. For me, it's my favorite B.B. King recording. I mean, obviously, we have, like, the classic ones from the classic recordings and their original versions from the 50s. And those are all well and fine. But for me, the true, purest, best B.B. King records that were ever released are, for me, B.B. King, Live at the Regal, and B.B. King's Live at the Cook County Jail.
Yeah, Cook County, baby.
And
That's my favorite.
Cook County is 71, too. So there's also that to take in mind. But I think that album just stands up. It's probably like my last favorite thing B.B. King did. Not that his releases are really that bad. They're just kind of so-so and get more...
Riding with the King? You're not a big fan?
There's only so many great blues records you can make, I think. You get what I'm saying? But
I hear that though. I hear that.
But the playing on, just to hear like people like Eric Clapton talk about Live at the Regal and what like that record meant for him when he had really listened to it. Like this is your basic Guitar Hero. Almost every single guitar player has ripped off licks from Live at the Regal, and it really shows like just how great his band was. Again, this record, Live at the Regal, has a lot in common with James Brown's
Live at the Apollo.
Thank you. It shows the bands of that era, and there's also, I don't know the name of it, but there's also another great Ike and Tina record from '63 that's live that also shows the power of the Chitlin circuit back in the day, where you had to get your own bands together, get your own show, and have your own touring group within yourself.
And the people gotta be dancing from the second you fucking hit the stage.
Right. It's not like there's like a house DJ. You're providing the whole B.B. King and his band are the entertainment for the evening. So that's all the entertainment. So like 4 hours. So
yeah.
But I just really think that B.B. King is he's obviously the most well known that we're talking about. I just think for me, like the things that he really brought to the blues was just a sense of like showmanship and the way you can make your guitar be like the main focus. You know what I mean? Like bring the electric guitar into the forefront of that kind of, and
show the power of one note.
Yeah, that too. Like bleed a note, like really let people suffer.
I think all three of the Kings had the ability to do that. You know what I mean? Like really, really just kind of hang on a note and give a lot of emotion into one single note rather than create these sort of complicated phrases. Although B.B. King could do that too. I would say to use a patriarchal term, that B.B. King would be considered maybe the first among equals.
And I also wanted to make a this is like not
You
to
know,
really
first among equals.
what you just said, but I'd like to also make the point too that I think B.B. King is the most well-known blues player that we're talking about today for another huge reason. B.B. King signed to ABC Paramount Records in the mid-'60s, which would have gave him the best record deal of any blues artist of that time. ABC Paramount also had Ray Charles. So not only do you have Ray Charles on your record, who's arguably the greatest R&B performer that has ever lived, you have B.B. King. So that was that record cut, you know what I mean? So they really cornered the market on that and pushed B.B. King so hard. There's so many ABC Paramount B.B. King compilations from the mid-'60s. And I think it really positioned him to expand his career out and be that performer that he, you know, with the backing of the record label. Like, because Jeff was saying, like when Stax folded, you know, Albert King really didn't have a place to go, a place to be. He ended up on all these different record labels, and yet his legacy was restored in the 80s because of people like Stevie Ray Vaughan. It was a bit harder, where B.B. King has always been like the Duke Ellington of the blues, if you will. Right? And because like if you needed somebody to represent the blues, like he was Duke Ellington. He was the guy of the blues. He was there for every stage of it. He saw it transform. He saw it go electric, all this stuff. So I really think that like good fortune set him right, but he was also always such an avid champion of the blues, just as Duke Ellington was for jazz, that you would like that's what lays him in that position. He really took on the crown of king, if you will, right?
Yeah, I think another thing that was a benefit to him, and just another thing that was just happenstance and luck, he only died 5 years ago.
Right.
So he's played with everybody who's ever played, because he was the longest living of these three guys.
Yeah, and it's great too, because you're like, I wonder what B.B. King and John Mayer sound like, and then you're like, oh, there's a video, and you're like, I wonder what B.B. King and Clapton sound like. There's a video. I wonder what B.B. King and Santana sound like. Yeah. I don't even know if there's a video, but there's probably a video.
My favorite B.B. King thing is not even him playing. I love the video. I think it was maybe the Hollywood Bowl. I'm not really sure the venue, but it's B.B. King's All Stars, and this song features John Mayer on rhythm guitar and Derek Trucks on lead guitar. And it's just a video of Derek Trucks playing a beautiful solo, and then B.B. King looking at him and saying, I think that's the best I've ever heard blues played. And he tells him, just play that same solo exactly the same again. Like it's my favorite B.B. King moment of all time.
Isn't it one moment where he looks at Susan Tedeschi, who's Derek Trucks' wife, and he's like, "Oh, now I know why you married."
Yeah, he starts making some old man misogynistic type. Yeah. But I just love the way that he's sitting there, and he reaches over and he holds Derek Truck's shoulder, and he just looks in his eyes. And he says, "I think that's the best I've ever heard the blues played." I love that. Sometimes if I just want to have a feel good moment, I'll just look up that video. Like I've probably seen that video 100 times.
Yeah.
But I think that's the magic of B.B. King, though. That's why he's so, like, you know what I mean, magnetic. Because, like, even if you're not, like, a fan of the blues, like, B.B. King, if you watched a B.B., he took you in. There's no doubt in my mind, you know?
Also, I wanted to add, too, if you think about it, B.B. King played with fucking U2. I mean, not that I'm a big U2 fan, but, like, if you think about it, he broke through a whole other thing, which was this Irish stadium rock pop market that all of a sudden every U2 fan knew who B.B. King was. You know what I mean?
Like, yeah, and he was like 72 years old at the time or something.
The best is when they're like going over the song with him, and I think The Edge is trying to like show him like chord changes, and he's like, no, he's like, I don't play chords. He's like, I either sing or I solo.
I play guitar. I don't play chords.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and that was just, to me, is amazing. Like
that always blew my mind too. Like B.B. King's playing is that like he does not really play chords, and so like watching him play is just like it's just a whole nother monster. He doesn't play guitar like anybody else. That's what like really is like so captivating for me, because like when he'll say something and then his hands just like reflect what he just said in a different way without using words. And then most of the time it cuts you deeper than what he just said. He's like, I just said something, and now I'm gonna drive it home with this killer lick, and you're gonna feel it in your gut. Like I said what it is, and now you're gonna feel it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just a great, I don't know. He's just always almost too good for words. Like I remember when he passed away, me and Mike just were like, we were so heartbroken, but it felt so good at the same time to like blast The Thrill Is Gone out the window. You know what I mean? It was, bittersweet.
Yeah. And The Thrill Is Gone too is another interesting song, because that was like the first time I think like an orchestra, like strings were used on like a blues single,
ABC
like a blues
Records,
single
man.
ballad.
They had the budget.
Yeah, Paramount. They were putting Jeff Stephanie.
I remember that's gonna like, I think it was something to do with like if he was doing like a blues song like that, it would kind of count again. It would like, oh, do you guys hear me? Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I got like a weird notification on the app. Right,
you cut out.
Yeah,
for
it said
second.
finish now or something. We might only have an hour limit. Dun dun dun. But
finish up. No, we've every show we do is
no. But I mean for actually recording it on the app, because we usually record in different ways. And then I put it into the app. I'm letting out my secrets though on the podcast. This is trademark information, copywritten information by the Garage. Anyway. I'm sorry. I completely forgot what the hell I was saying. That tripped me up so bad. Oh yeah. So basically, he thought he was gonna like lose street cred or something. You know what I mean? Like if he was gonna use strings on a thing, that was like a thing. They were like, oh, he's like selling out. He's putting strings on a blues song or whatever. And then it just, I mean, in a way, it sold him out, I guess, if you want to call it selling out. But in another way, it completely catapulted his career. For me, I found him selling out.
It's good.
Like when he's doing a commercial for like that one touch insulin test.
Oh,
that's not selling out. That's important public service.
It's the Burger King commercials, man. The Burger King. That's what you don't want. The insulin commercial is good for everyone.
Yeah, especially a guy who needs to be pumping insulin all day to be touting Burger King.
Well, you know what? Okay, maybe. All right.
At the end of the commercial, he loads up a giant shot.
Maybe that makes me feel a little bad that I said that him doing an insulin commercial is him selling out. But what I mean, I don't know. I can't really talk about that. I'm sorry.
What you can't live with sugar?
Oh man, what creates the insulin? Isn't his pancreas? His pancreas.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
What?
Mike, the thrill is gone.
Yeah.
The pancreas is gone.
We might have to take a break and reconnect this bad boy. So why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll start a new thing so we can finish the rest of this off on Freddy King and our in conclusions and alsos. So we'll be right back.
Sounds.
And we're back. All right. So moving on, we left off with BB.
Oh wait, can I ask a question real fast?
Yeah, please do.
Jeff, can you smell or taste?
I'm tasting these delicious not pita chips.
Wow.
Yeah. So those of you who listened to the most recent episode, I had COVID, but who knows if I had COVID, because I had a negative test. 3 days later, I had a positive test. Started isolating, but they sent me results that were conflicting on that second test. So the day I started isolating, I went and got another test, and that test came back negative. And the lady said, out of the thousands of caseloads she has handled, she has none that weren't rapid testing, where someone had a positive and then a negative within 4 days. And I'm reading scientific journal articles like I'm a fucking scientist. But like
trying to figure out.
Yeah, but the false positive rate for I think it's PNR, PCR, whatever the acronym for the accurate testing, which is what I got. The false positive rate is like 0.02%.
Damn.
So I don't know. Maybe it's a false positive. The way she explained it was maybe it just like dipped into the like positive for that day, like the viral load, but then it was just at the threshold. And
Oh, right.
but I was just like, well, the thing I was hoping to get out of this fucking week of isolation was at the very least I won't be so paranoid about getting COVID in the next 2 months because you can't get it again. But now I'm like, well, I'm probably gonna get it at fucking Walmart tomorrow, so who knows? Like, I don't know.
Dude, I went to Walmart the other day. I thought they were still open 24/7. They're not.
No.
They had people lining up outside, and I went to walk in the building, and I'm like, it was like 10 minutes before 7. I was like, oh, is it not open? And they're like, no. I was like, are you guys just waiting outside? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get back in my car. Like, but they were all like crammed near the door. I'm like, I'm out of here.
Anyway, so we're just bullshitting. We'll like cut out all this early stuff and then.
All right. Yeah.
Bring us in, Master Ceremonies.
3 minutes and 24 seconds. That's where I got to cut it off. All right. What's going on, fellas? Welcome back. How you doing? I had to go take a pizza out of the oven.
Is that a euphemism?
No, I literally just had to do that.
Oh, okay.
So, but anyway, speaking of pizza, Freddie King was born. Freddie King was born.
Freddie
September the 3rd,
King.
1934, to two loving parents in the small Texan town of Gilma, Texas. His like musically, he didn't really. He did get a guitar early on in his childhood, but I think things like really got serious for him when, as a teenager, he moved to Chicago.
Did he have a brother?
I don't think he had a brother.
B.B.King. Have you been paying attention?
B.B.King? Baby King.
King.
The thing about Freddie King is like his career, it's not like it was really that long in comparison. Like if you're going to compare everything of his to say BB or Albert, for sure. I mean, Albert, one might call a sort of a late bloomer in terms of his musical career recognition. Freddie King was just kind of like, he was like Halley's Comet, you know. He came, everything happened, and then he's gone. Next thing you know, he's gone. So like, I mean, his career really starts in like 59-ish. He signs with Federal Records, and if you think about it, 59, and then I think 74 he dies.
Federal is also a subsidiary of Crown and King Records.
Yes.
Just for some reference point there.
Yeah, 76 he died at the age of 42. But yeah. It was the subsidiary, of Cincinnati King Records. So on Federal Records, this is where you get like the big hit released in 1960 was Have You Ever Loved a Woman? That, I mean, at least for me, like I think one of his like best shining moments. I mean, Eric Clapton covers that on Derek and the Dominoes. They do the song "Have You Ever Loved a Woman," and that pretty much like put him up onto the charts, and he started getting recognition. But the thing was with him too was that even though like he lived in Chicago and he was hanging around with all these session guys, all the Chicago guys, Willie Dixon's, Your Muddy Waters, and so on, like all these guys, like he kept getting shot down by Chess Records. Like I don't think he actually ever signed to Chess.
He did not.
No, yeah, it's his contract. Yeah, with Federal ended in '66, and then he ended up signing to Atlantic.
Yeah. Also,
and then you get those are his two big albums. My Feeling for the Blues and Freddie King is a Blues Master. Freddie King is a Blues Master, one of my favorite records of his. And then Getting Ready is another one that I really, really love.
Did you happen to listen to Freddie King Sings, his first record that was released?
Along with
Let's Hide Away with Freddie King. Those first two albums on Federal Records, like Let's Hide Away, which is like more instrumental based, which I thought was really cool. I mean, because I like listened to it and it was very much more like instrumentally like kind of stuff. And it was I felt it was like way different from like the other two that we're talking about too, because it was more like I want to say like more like probably like the dirtiest. Is that a good the grittiest kind of, because it's more of that, like, you know, the
jumpy.
Yeah, the instrumental blues too being pretty different from the other two, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, at least early.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I really love about him is, well, there's a couple of different things. Like, okay, famously, he's also known for playing like the ES 335, just like B.B.King did. But he also famously played a Les Paul, like a gold top Les Paul with P90s in them. What's really cool about him too, that is unlike unlike Albert or BB, was that Freddie actually used like banjo style finger picks on each individual finger each of his individual fingers, which was different, much different. The attack is much different in that way, where like, especially if it's on like the tips of your fingers, you know, when you go to play a note, you're pulling that note instead of picking it. You know what I mean? It's much more, a lot of his attack was a lot more like an up stroke, say, like an up pick than a down pick.
Would you say he was almost like a more polished, I mean, obviously because he's also a Texas blues player, but Lightning Hopkins, because Lightning's got a lot of that like
I mean, there's no
up kind of strokes.
Yeah, there's no doubt that I think that influence is definitely there. The Lightning Hopkins influence on Freddie King, yeah, because I mean, if you think about it in a funny way, like say like what Muddy Waters was to B.B. King is kind of like what Lightning Hopkins was to Freddie King, in a sense that like Lightning Hopkins was kind of part of that, like the old country sort of club, you know, where Muddy Waters obviously passed that and like went to Chicago and became like a famous Chicago blues musician guy too. But there's more, you know what I mean? Like the roots are still in the country blues. But yeah, man. And the other thing that I love about Freddie King, and that has absolutely nothing to do with his music, but absolutely everything to do with his death, is the fact that this dude basically never ate, but instead would just his diet consisted of Bloody Marys.
Oh yeah,
because the dude was always on the road. If you think about it, he was another one. As I'm sure Albert, as I'm sure BB was like, yeah, the money that you make is you go play halls. Like, it's all about shows, baby. You have the traveling band and all that. And yeah, instead of actually eating, he would just drink Bloody Marys, and then he just died because he died of like these crazy bad stomach ulcers and deteriorating health. And then once you mix that with the fact that I'm sure the dude never fucking drank water, like, let's be real.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
there's water in vodka.
Yeah, right. Basically, though. Yeah, he had pancreatitis too, but he was only 42 years old, man. I mean, that's what's crazy about this, is like, if you think about it this way, I mean, when did you say Albert King kind of became successful?
Mid 60s, 66, 67.
And how old was he then?
41, 42.
You're right. So Albert King is in a similar place in his life. Here's Albert King, like, starting to become like a made guy.
Yeah, I mean, on that note of the substance abuse stuff, something that I found when I was researching Albert King, the dude smoked like a chimney. He had a pipe in his mouth almost all the time. But he said he never touched a drop of alcohol or never did any drugs and never let any of his band members do those things, because he just saw how it derailed people's lives and careers.
Right. So that's interesting too, to think about, like, in a sense, like Albert, who was, like you said, like 41 at the time of him, like really starting to like become like a, you know, like picking up and stuff like that. It's interesting because like he unlike the other guys who kind of got big at a younger age, him getting big at a little bit of an older age seems like he was kind of, as a result of that, he was kind of able to keep out like some of the riffraff, you know, keep out some of the bad sides of like the touring group and all that, which a guy like Freddy King would fall victim to, which is just relentless tour schedules, constant shows and just having to like stay on top of shit. So basically, all you do is just you drink Bloody Marys, you eat the the celery stalk, a couple of olives, a pickle.
So nasty.
You know, tomato juice, salt and pepper, baby.
So
How's
gross.
you go? You know.
Ugh, it is gross.
So gross.
I'd say Freddie King too. Like Mike was saying, like towards super heavily, but I think what like really, because like you really have like two parts of his career, right? You kind of have like the early part where he had like these instrumental hits in Hideaway, and then some early vocal hits. Federal and King kind of like juice him for all he's worth, right? Kind of thing. And then he kind of gets picked up by ABC. They do 2 records that are okay. He's a Blues Master. It's a great record. But, like, I think obviously the early stuff is, like, the quintessential. But I'd say probably, at least in my world, the lasting legacy record is that record Getting Ready, released on Shelter. Which is the reason I think that was so successful, which is obviously, like we were talking earlier, is the label. So Shelter Records was set up by Leon Russell and producer Danny Cordell, who did the early hits of The Who and the Kinks in England. So Shelter Records, though, was really a musician's label. Tom Petty's first 2 records are on Shelter. Leon Russell's stuff is on Shelter. A lot of cool stuff like came out on that record, but Leon Russell plays on Getting Ready. What's that song, Going Down? The piano on that.
Oh yeah,
that's Leon Russell. Now that I don't know if you've known that, but like if you didn't, now you know, because it's that thumping gospel-y piano. And
isn't that the theme song for Eastbound and Down?
Hell yeah, it is.
yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like that stuff, like that's what I really found when I was listening to him, because when I listened to it, I thought like the instrumental stuff was like super great, super of its area. It was Texas, so it was a different style of blues. And then when you get to the later stuff, like, because that album I was just talking about with Leon Russell, that's 71. I feel like he really just took to adapting with the sound of like what they were doing, and instead of fighting like the new sound, like maybe Howlin' Wolf doesn't like this album, you know, that kind of stuff, where they were really fighting the sound, and then like he's like, nope, just let's make it heavy, let's rock it, let's, you know, get a rolling backbeat on it. It's like that song to me sounds like a it's like a, I mean, it's definitely a Leon Russell production. It's very, it's you know, it's got all the stuff on it, but it's still at the core like one of the most rock and blues songs of the era, and it cuts through all that other like I'm gonna say this in quotes, but like Zeppelin-y type blues heavy ripoffs, because it's the original thing. He's that guy. And so like it's really cool to have like a heavier blues record in Getting Ready in 71, where you like I can really appreciate like him making a heavy, that, because that record to me is like, it's a heavy blues record, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely.
It's definitely got like that song's got definitely more in common with like, you know, like the Humble Pies and Fleetwood Macs of the late 60s than it does with like the Freddie King Sings, I would say.
Yeah.
He's definitely the most rock and roll out of the 3 Kings.
Yeah,
I love watching his early 70s like TV performances. That's pretty much the extent of what I know of Freddie King. Like go on YouTube and just look up Freddie King, and you'll see him with his red ES 335, and he's just having a blast. Huge lapels, like I think he had mutton chops. And he's just smiling and rocking, and the music just kicks. It's
that's a
much
great way
more
to
rock and roll.
That's a great way to put it, Jeff. Like if you're gonna try to like say what's different about the three Kings, is like I would say he's definitely more of the rock and roll one, where like he would kind of take that influence and really like, you know, kind of run with it more, like, you know, Chuck Berry kind of thing, where like the rest of them were more like, I'm gonna stick more to the 12 bar and kind of like do it there, but you know, they weren't afraid to be like, well, if it's gonna have a bridge and it's rocking, whatever, I don't give a shit, let's play, you know.
He also played out of 3, he like his style, I don't know what came first, the style or like the sound he was playing, but he like has the most proficiency of notes. Like he plays the most, like he's the most like playing like like The other guys kind of like sat in the pocket and played vocal phrases, and Freddie King kind of just like riffed notes.
Yeah, thank you. That's like I was trying to like articulate it like a little bit more, but like it's more of the way like as Eric Clapton is so influenced by B.B. King. Eric Clapton still had to play notes and all the chords in all the bands that he was in and keep like a rhythm going. Where like and that's like the more of the style of electric guitar that everybody does today, where you learn chords and you know what I mean, soloing. Where it's like both are really more of like every guitar player really does both nowadays. I feel like he was kind of the first like bringing that together with like more of like great songwriting structure of pop music and blues, you know, mixed together with all that great rock and roll stuff. Right? You know?
Yeah, I think so. So good assessment of the three Kings, man. I mean, I think, like we said, you know, Freddie, if you want more of those hard-hitting, hard-rocking blues, Freddie King's your guy. If you want like a nice, the way I would think about it with BB, a nice cruise, a nice night
riding
through
with
the
the
town
king,
with like
baby.
a woman you love, saying, riding with the king, yeah, keeping it classy blues, you know.
Yeah.
And then Albert to me is sort of more of a preacher of blues.
Yeah, good way to put it.
You know, so all three obviously laid the foundation down for a lot of the, you know, the blues that would follow.
And
but all three are incredible in their own right.
Can I just give a quick, real fast? If we're doing Freddie King records, you want to do Freddie King Sings, Let's Hide Away and Dance with Freddie King, and I would definitely shout out Getting Ready. Those three records are killer. Albert King, Born Under a Bad Sign album on Stax. Also, is that album called Blues Power Live at the Fillmore?
Yeah, Live Wire Blues Power. Yep.
There you go. Those two records, for Albert King, I would say really sum up like what he's all about and the greatness of him. Also, you get great studio and a great live in that. And then B.B. King, I would search out the early Crowd Records singles. So like a greatest hits will do for that, for the early 50s recordings. And then I would really just say Live at the Regal and Live at Cook County Jail are really would shout out like those artists perfectly for me and would give you like, that is what I would listen to. That's like the classic canon of those artists, I guess, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I would throw in maybe like Live and Well and maybe Completely Well for B.B. King if you want to go a little bit later. But I'd say late 60s, early 70s is pretty much where I sort of start to tap out on B.B. King.
Yeah, definitely.
Like we said earlier, I don't hate his 70s stuff, but it's not my favorite. I don't think it's the best of what he has to offer. I think the earlier stuff is what he has the best.
And don't forget
But if you want something later, there's a good B.B. King Live at the Apollo. It's just a fun little album. It's nothing crazy. It's, you know, it's a little bit later. I want to say maybe it's like late 80s, even maybe early 90s. He does a live show at the Apollo. Not terrible for later B.B. King, but
and while you're celebrating the holidays this weekend, make sure you're spinning Backdoor Santa by B.B. King.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So hopefully we'll be able to make a companion piece to this. I don't know if you guys want to get, you know, maybe hop on and do one, or one of us, you know, we'll figure something out. But at some point we'll try to do a Spotify companion piece to this that where we maybe add like 3 songs from each artist, all 3 songs that we kind of feel like best exemplify all three artists kind of thing too. So, you know, we might have that down the road in the future here this week. But either way, don't forget to like us and subscribe and, you know, rate us and all that fun stuff on Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and all that stuff too. So I've been Mike. Anyway, Jeff and Luke, it was nice to see you guys, even though we haven't been able to see each other in like real life. So.
Yeah, you know, that ambiguous COVID.
It's a tricky one.
She's a sneaky beast, that Covita. So I don't know.
Enjoy your holidays. Wear a mask. Distance.
Yeah, wash your hands.
And making yourself comfortable is what's most important.
Yeah, and wear your mask over your nose. Too.
Yeah.
Just wanted to throw that one out there.
And your eyes, just in case.
And your eyes. In fact, don't even breathe. Just don't move.
Don't see love.
Stay in one house, in one room in the house, then don't move.
And spin those records, man.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, I've been Mike, Luke, and Jeff. We love
See
you guys.
ya.
Make sure you get in the garage.
Peace.
We'll see you next
Peace.
time.